Point number two, perhaps an even more fascinating phenomenon from a human perspective. Very, very, very beautiful, and just as well known from the experience of so many people, deathbed visions. What happens? To sum up, research tells us that about 10% of us are conscious at the moment of passing. Others, most people, unfortunately, are affected by illnesses. In short, they are not conscious, they are not awake. Among the 10% who are conscious at the moment of passing, 2/3, that is 66% of cases, have visions of what seems to be the afterlife and have sustained conversations with people. Let's say they are debilitated, weak, bedridden, maybe for weeks. Suddenly they get up. It's as if they wake up. Their face lights up and they start to talk. And they talk to those they say are relatives, deceased, often their father, mother, or someone from an earlier generation. And they say that they've come to take me. They've come to help me cross over, to take me to the other side. And they're happy and want to go. This is a wonderful experience. So all the explanations, let's say, that have been put forward by skeptics have been disproven by research. None of the traditional explanations allow us to explain why these things happen. Then there are a couple of details. Unfortunately, we don't have time. I would like to go into them, but here too I ask a momentary act of faith from our audience to understand that I use this second group of people as another category of my subjects. The third category, and let's really brace ourselves for this, are the mysterious disembodied personalities, the wandering spirits, and the voices of the dead themselves who have reached out to speak with us from beyond. Since the beginning of history, always and so on, but these communications have been studied for almost 200 years, since the episodes of the Fox sisters in America around 1850. They have been extensively and rigorously studied over many years. And today we have many compelling pieces of evidence and scientific reasons to believe that these mysterious disembodied personalities are exactly the individuals they claim themselves to be. I'd like to remind you, in case there's anyone in our audience, surely there is, who has a scientific mind and understands a bit about laboratory experiments, keep in mind that in the last 10 years, there have been 12 replications by different university centers with mediums. A medium is not someone who tells you that you'll win the lottery next week. A medium is someone who communicates with the dead, and mediums who truly speak with the dead. There are very few of them, but they do exist. And some of these we call research mediums because they are so skilled, so gifted, that they are used in scientific experiments. There is a protocol that we call quintuple blind, meaning there are 5 levels of separation between you, Enzo, who wants to hear, who knows about your father who has passed away, and the medium who provides the information. These 5 replications have produced significant results with an odds against chance as we measure it. If these results were, there is a 1 in a million chance that these results could have happened by chance. So the people who speak to us from the other side, we have every reason to believe that they are who they say they are. Near-death experiences, deathbed visions, and spirits who speak to us from the other side all say the same thing or the same things. And now, if you like, let's quickly make a little map of what seems to be waiting for us on the other side.
Yes, very gladly. So I'll let you continue because, in fact, I was just wondering, especially about this celebration, which is the passage to the other side. We all have to take part in it.
Exactly. But it is a celebration. It really seems to be a celebration.
And what I've started to notice, because I'm 62 years old, and so I have people around me who are much older, 85. My aunt just passed away, and so on, is that often around the dying person, there is a kind of
heaviness, isn't there?
Sadness. Often people talk around the dying person who may no longer be conscious, and they say certain things. So it would be nice if we could also give some advice on how to treat the dying person and make this map, the one you were talking about what happens at that moment.
All right, the advice. If I may, maybe we can put it a little later. Let's quickly make this map first. If anyone has a more specific interest, the book I was talking about has just been released in Italian as well. I wrote it. I am, alas, a native speaker of 3 languages, and for 35 years, I have been moving in an English-speaking environment. So I always write in English. All my books were first written in English. And then 2 of them also have an Italian translation. And the latest one, which is precisely about these topics, My Guide to the Only Planet, to the Afterlife, is called A Step into the Light and has just been released on Amazon. So if anyone is interested, with my name, Piero Calvi Parisetti, A Step into the Light, try this book here. Now, some fundamental elements of this process we call death, and of what happens afterwards. Truth, or at least apparent truth, number 1. Contrary to the fears we all have of dying alone, we do not die alone. We die welcomed and accompanied by loved ones who have passed before us, sometimes by spiritually significant figures. Depending on one's traditions, everyone believes what they want, thinks according to their upbringing, and so on. So for the most part, they are in any case loved ones who have passed over and who come to get us, to help us make the transition. So this in itself is already a beautiful moment of hope, those final hours. Deathbed visions typically occur between 24 and 48, or from 48 to 24 hours before actual death. This is already, in my opinion, a beautiful moment, a wonderful element of hope. The second point, which emerges from the testimony of our sources, is that the very moment, the instant of passing, is a non-event. There is no interruption of the flow of consciousness between before and after. So much so that many people, immediately after passing, have not yet realized that they have died. They see their own body and say, but that's me, but I feel exactly as I did an hour ago, 10 minutes ago, and now I'm looking from the outside. I look at that thing there that looks like a dead pig, and it's my body on the stretcher. So it's a dead thing. If there is, this is very interesting, if there is a change, this change is welcome because it is the instant cessation of the suffering that was there. If someone has cancer, was full of pain, or maybe with COVID was struggling to breathe, with that terrible rattling, the sign that the moment of passing has come is that these things disappear. And one says, but how? Suddenly I feel fine, I can breathe, I'm not in pain anymore, and so on. And then people gradually realize that they no longer have a physical body, essentially. But consciousness, all the elements we call the mind, so awareness, as it's called, being present in the world, memories remain. In some way, even sensations, thoughts, and perceptions of the surrounding world remain exactly the same, especially in the very first, let's call them moments or hours after passing away. The third conclusion, I don't want to call it a truth because that's a big word, but the third generalization we can make is that the non-material world that awaits us is organized into different levels. The experiences through which you call them souls, I have a small doubt about the word soul, because soul has a religious connotation, and I would rather say consciousness, the personality. That us, which has existed and developed for 50, 60, 100 years with a physical body, continues to exist, but we are still ourselves, simply without a physical body. This mind, this disembodied personality, goes through various phases, which would take too long to describe here. And these are phases that, in a certain way, we can see as ascending. Ascending towards what? Ascending in the sense that one progressively moves away from materiality and moves more and more toward immateriality, toward pure spirit, toward pure consciousness. That is, at first, the person, the soul, if you want to call it that, finds itself in an environment that is exactly the one it has just left. then little by little, it's interesting to see why people talk about paradise, why there are always these descriptions of colors, wonderful colors, green meadows, the sun shining brighter than I've ever seen, the light, the warmth, and so on. Because you live and evolve in an environment that is defined as psychoplastic, meaning an environment created by our thoughts. What we expect to see on the other side, for the most part, is what we actually see. And here there are many things. I'm really just giving generalities. The other thing I wanted to say, which I feel is important, is that many people, especially those who grew up in a, unfortunately, Catholic environment. I'm saying unfortunately because sadly the Catholic religion, with this idea of judgment, thank you, is very strict and causes a lot of harm. Instead, what we are constantly told by those who have had a near-death experience, who have been to the other side and come back, and by those who are on the other side, is that there is a process of life review, which is a specific phase of our evolution. But it is not a process of judgment. It is a process in which we review every single moment, every single feeling, every thought, every action of our life, and we are aware of the impact that these actions, thoughts, or things have had on other people. This is not done with the purpose of making us feel good about the good actions or bad about the bad actions. It is done with the purpose of learning, to understand, to comprehend, to move forward, and to evolve. It can be a process, they tell us, that is done alone, or it can be a process in which one is accompanied by higher souls or spiritual beings. Each person describes it in their own language. But it is important to remember that we are not judged and either absolved or condemned. It is we ourselves who review, who reflect, who draw conclusions from the incarnation we have had. Last one, we're almost done, then I'll give you the floor. It is
so stimulating that I immediately have so many questions.
Remember that it's not me speaking. I'm not the spiritual master. These are my sources, our sources. And in the book, you can find all of them. I took many, not just, I add a bit of language to provide context, but I actually quote exactly what these witnesses tell us. So this progression through spheres or levels or environments, I'm not sure what to call them, that become progressively less material and more spiritual, happens at different speeds for different people, because we all have our own story, our own inclinations, and so on. But it's something they describe to us as inevitable. It's like a little bubble of air that forms at the bottom of the sea, and inevitably, maybe it goes a bit this way and then a bit that way, but inevitably it has to rise, to expand, to become less concentrated and larger. It becomes...
It's almost like a fragrance.
But if you want, it has to rise. I mean, it's organic, it's natural, that's how it happens. The complication, the conference we attended about the recollection of past lives, is that it seems that at a certain point in this process, for many of us, though not for everyone, there is the decision to return to life, incarnated. Because, and this is the ultimate conclusion, the grand one, the book of life seems to tell us that life, existence, happens in a series of very long cycles that include an incarnated life on earth, or at least in a material world, followed by a stay in these subsequent dimensions of the spirit world, followed by a new incarnation, followed by another stay. And all of this grand, enormous, incredibly long project, of which we, right now, you and I in this incarnated life, have no awareness, no memory, no conception, unfortunately, I would say, but that's how things are. It seems to have the purpose of elevation. It seems to have the purpose of giving us experience, wisdom, knowledge, and at a certain point when we have completed our incredibly long journey, through all these successive phases, back and forth, then there is no longer any need to reincarnate, and they tell us that there is this dissolution, which isn't really a dissolution though. because mysteriously, in some way, we still retain our individuality, but we reunite, we merge, as they say in English, like a drop of water that returns to being the ocean, with this field of primordial, universal consciousness, which can very well be called God for those who wish, or the source for those who prefer. I personally feel a great attraction to this idea. In Hinduism, they call it Brahman. It is this primordial consciousness that is the ultimate nature of everything that exists. First comes consciousness, and then comes matter, they say. The Advaita Vedānta school from the last Vedic period, about 1,500 years before Christ. And so it would seem that our destiny as souls or personalities is to return to being what we have always been. But it's like, pardon me, let me finish with this image that I've always found very beautiful. It's like the ocean that at a certain point appears to us as a wave. Right now, I am a wave, but I have always been the ocean. And in the end, after going up and down millions of times, as a wave, at a certain point, I return to being the ocean, which I have always been. This is a very beautiful image.
Beautiful.